Hello, everyone. Good morning, and welcome to another edition of Full Press Fantasy Live. Here we are for Week 15, the fantasy football playoffs. So exciting time. And of course, the holiday season, the season is coming to an end. So, just I guess, a warning, letting people know that this will actually be the final episode of the season of Full Press Fantasy Live. So, I will still be doing some episodes of Full Press Fantasy Pod. I think we'll do at least one more of that, kind of prepping Week 16. Nothing for Week 17, probably podcast wise, but we're not leaving you in the dark. You can always find great content at fullpresscoverage.com. I will do my rankings up until Week 18, actually. So, most fantasy championships are Week 17. I know some are Week 18, so I will still have rankings put out Week 18. And I'll still put out a goal line guide article. So the touchdown prediction upside, because frankly, regardless of which players are playing, and that's usually the complication of Week 18, starters being held out as teams prep for the playoffs. But the beauty of that is it's team efficiency and defensive efficiency and the lines odds. So the goal line guide will still definitely be probably the most important thing that week. The rankings could be tricky because of that. But as mentioned, we'll keep you covered at fullpresscoverage.com through the fantasy football playoffs and the NFL regular season. So check out fullpresscoverage.com. I've got my rankings, Brad Harvin's rankings, my co-host on the Full Press Fantasy Pod, and my goal line guide article. Those will be 3 weekly articles that you can access again every week on fullpresscoverage.com. Also, before we get started here, also going to let you know the double deposit match on my bookie. So if you join up if you join to my bookie with the promo code PRESS22, you can join and get a deposit match up to $1,000. So whatever you join with, you will sign up with initially. They'll double that, so you get double your money. Speaking of joining, we've got George Carmi joining. Perfect timing, George.
Good morning, sir. How you doing today?
Doing well. How about you?
I'm doing very well. Happy Sunday. Just enjoying some World Cup soccer in the morning, getting my fantasy football lineups ready for the playoffs. I'm excited.
Funny, I actually forgot about that, and I just kind of checked the score before going. I was planning to watch it too, and then totally slipped my mind.
No, that's all good.
I think just the depression of Jonathan Taylor's injury is setting in, and I'm just miserable. But everything's great.
Okay, I can totally understand. Totally understandable. I get it.
Hope springs eternal, though. Washington plays tonight, big key game. I know I've got a couple of one key decision that
I saw that. It's going to be interesting.
Involve that game, but cool. Couple of Washington players I'm considering.
Yeah, Kyle, how'd the Saturday games go for you? Did you off to a good start or what?
Well, Jonathan Taylor got hurt, so that really hurt, both literally and figuratively. I've got a league with Jefferson and Hill, which is nice because there's a lot of spots really nice. I'm playing against Tyreek Hill, so at least having one spot is good.
Gotcha. Yeah, I was looking pretty good. I'm actually going to pull up my team right now. I got off to a nice start. Basically, let me get my team going really quickly over here. Who did I have? I had Christian McCaffrey on Thursday night. That actually was huge for me. Christian McCaffrey and George Kittle. So I was basically up 51 points to nothing going into Saturday's games. But my opponent in the first round of the playoffs had Josh Allen. So that kind of was a great equalizer right there. So we're starting to balance a little bit right there. So looking forward to talk football with you today.
Yeah, for sure. As always, George. Mm-hmm. And of course, as always, head over to the Full Press Coverage YouTube page and head into the chat if you have any start-sit questions. And we'll get through. George and I'll talk about some of our decisions, and then later we'll get through and we'll talk about the inactive list as that becomes available, and we know that. So I'm just I'll share my screen here, and we'll talk about the famous spreadsheet that I post every week for start-sits. And I got to move some stuff over.
Yeah, no worries. Yeah, so Kyle, touch on it real quick. I know this is actually great. So I've been really happy working with Kyle throughout the year. He actually put together this spreadsheet to kind of break down the week and different matchups, kind of break things down. It's very nuanced in regard to players and who they're going for and their floor and their ceiling. So Kyle, what do you look at when you put this together?
Yeah, so of course we're after fantasy points, right? So the first 3 categories I'm looking at for a player is their production. What have they averaged? But then also, what's their range of outcomes in terms of what's the most they've scored, least they've scored. We talk about this player's got a high ceiling, got a high floor. I really want to see do they actually, and I want to put them all together. And I'm very visual, so I like putting this all. I can see it all, every player that I'm considering right next to each other and color coded. Offensive line ranking. just because the offensive line is important, so want to incorporate it.
100%.
I have a hard time finding out how to incorporate it pre-draft, and that's something I've got to kind of work on next
That's a
year.
good
Like,
idea. Good point.
how do I get that analysis into the draft rankings? But in season, this is how I'm able to do it. And thankfully, Football Outsiders has great rankings for that are free. If you join an account, it's free to get an account. There are premium accounts for Football
Fantastic.
Outsiders, but all of the stuff that I like using is free. So just sign up for free at Football Outsiders if you want.
100%. I agree with you. 100%.
Including the DVOA, defensive DVOA for the opposing team. Also the rankings, the fantasy points allowed for that defense. And I think we talked about it, the Texans, right? How it's a bad defense, so they should allow a lot of fantasy points, but because their run defense is so bad, teams don't have to throw on them, so they end up like the third fewest fantasy points to like receivers,
wide
and
receivers,
even though they're not particularly good at it. So it's nice to get both points of data.
100%. And yeah, I agree with you, Kyle. So I think the best part about this is there's so many like touch points to kind of reference, to kind of give you context of what the players are all about and kind of, potentially, how well they could do. And it's kind of like the user's decision to kind of put things together. And that's my favorite part about the show. We definitely look at all the different factors that come into play. We talk it out, but ultimately it will be your decision. But hopefully we're guiding you to the right decision.
Yeah. And I mean, like, again, some of the stuff we're getting is the big decision makers, right? Like the odds makers, the implied team total, the game total, those odds makers set, like they have so much information available to them and for them to create these lines. So with what they spit out in terms of the spreads and the implied totals and the over-unders for the game, we should be utilizing that because they seem to know better than us. That's why Vegas makes all the money.
100%.
Make all the money.
100%.
So utilize the information they have to the best of the abilities. And I know for my goal line guide, I mentioned the article earlier on, but you can go to fullpresscoverage.com every week to check out my every team's goal line grade, which I do split up to rushing and passing, because you'll notice for your Washington players, Antonio Gibson, Taylor Heineke, 2 different goal line grades, because again, one is for the rushing, one for the passing, but you can see the differentials, right? The math lines up in terms of, I'm looking at just the grade for each of those 2 components of the offense, but then also trying to take into account what the difference is, because we'll talk about one of your decisions, how that sort of came to me with that team earlier this year, unfortunately division rival for you, how passing and rushing both had really high grade. The passing grade is like so high this week. The team was just so good at running that they didn't, one passing touchdown maybe that week, and it was all on the ground. So understanding the difference between the 2 grades, I think, is also something I've started taking into account this year.
100%.
Plug it all together. We can get right started talking about that decision for you here, Dak Prescott, Aaron Rodgers, and that is that team that kind of inspired that change, the Cowboys. Before we get to the rest of it, this goal line grade, I'll kind of explain how it works here. So I take teams, how effective they are running and passing the ball inside the 5, meaning touchdown percentages. But then also I've taken data on the defense as well. So knowing, for instance, how the Jaguars, how often they're allowing touchdowns through the air versus on the ground. And then for Aaron Rodgers, also the Rams. So taking those 2 things together, and I am using the implied total and the game total in the goal line guide. So they are, in a sense, being double counted in this, but that's also like the key points of data we've talked about. The odds makers know, right?
100%. I agree.
And so anyway, so what we got here is the Cowboys passing game has a higher goal line grade than the Packers. 80.25 to 72.5. 80.25, I think, is the second highest grade overall this week. The Patriots run game has the highest. Now, we might not have Ramondre Stevenson to take advantage of it, but yeah, it's the highest. You'd expect to get really good passing totals and a lot of passing touchdowns if they get near the goal line. But the truth is, the Cowboys have the 3rd highest overall score, and that's why their differential is only half a point. So you look at the Packers, their rushing goal line grade is brutal. It's one of the worst in the league. We'll talk about Washington a little later too. It's down there in kind of that levels.
I know. Trust me, I know.
Well, actually, yeah. So I guess we can make the math here. Plus 23 would mean it's like less than 50. I think it's like a 49 point something, which would be at like the 4th worst score overall this week. So all to say, and that's both the Packers. Because the Packers have the worst goal line touchdown percentage in terms of rushing touchdowns on carries. It's weird because they've gone from one of the best to like this year, like being the absolute worst. I think I know why. They're not using their proper goal line back. Aaron Jones should get every carry inside the 5, as far as I'm concerned. They give AJ Dillon way too much, and he's shown this year he's ineffective at it.
Yeah.
his touchdowns usually come from far outside the 5 yard line. So that's so if they get in close, I'd expect they'll like if they're going to score touchdowns, it's probably going to happen through the air. Whereas with the Cowboys, both could happen, but because both could happen, they might just easily default to the run game. So,
Exactly.
but we
Ezekiel
can get
Elliott's
to
been pushing on that all year. I agree. And yeah, if you want to touch on it, I think you're kind of throwing the mic to me anyway. So yeah, looking over here, it's been kind of interesting. So Kyle and I, every Sunday we get together, we talk about our team and teams, and your teams as well. And it's been a journey for me. I've had, at the beginning of the year, I had Kyler Murray and Matt Stafford were my two quarterbacks. Matt Stafford's been up and down all year long. I ended up picking up Matt Stafford and picking up Dak Prescott and dropping Stafford. And this week I lost my go-to Kyler Murray. He basically tore his ACL, I guess earlier this week or last week, I suppose. I forget how, everything all blends together now. So I lost Kyler Murray. And essentially,
that was like 6 days ago.
That was like 6 days ago.
But it's right. It feels like that's been an eternity.
It feels like an eternity. Exactly right. So now I'm kind of poised to look at Dak Prescott. And it's so funny, guys. All of us play fantasy. And if you're listening to this program, Aaron Rodgers was sitting on the waiver wire. I'm like, this is ridiculous, right? I was like, I got to jump on this. I mean, I know he's been kind of up and down all year long, but I was like, you know what? Like, Aaron Rodgers sitting there. I have to drop Kyler Murray. Let me pick up Aaron Rodgers and see how this goes. First time having him on my team this year, kind of reflecting big picture. Like I know the context.
Good for you.
I'm gonna say I know the Packers context and what's been happening. I saw Aaron Rodgers live early this year, and he looks kind of disinterested and not necessarily meshing with his wide receivers very well. But I was just curious. I was like, you know what? I have Aaron Rodgers here. It is the playoffs. I do want to do well. Let me give it an honest foresight on who I should play, and then I put them next to each other. And I mean, they're potentially close, but as you can see, what the way I do it, very similar to Kyle's, I highlight whoever has the advantage on in green, right? So it's almost a clean sweep that Dak Prescott is basically, he looks like the more high upside, more ready, more steady quarterback as well. But I guess what's appealing to me, I'll get my thoughts out, then Kyle, jump in, please. Just kind of looking at it, right? Team total. The team total is higher for Dak Prescott. I believe that says 26. Is that what I'm seeing right there? It's a little bit blurry for me,
Yeah,
but 26. Yeah, so 26 points for the Dallas to score this week. Implied total of 48 is a little bit higher for the Dallas game as well. Dak Prescott, he has higher projection this week. He has a higher average, higher floor. He has a higher ceiling. His offensive line has been better this year. I mean, it's almost a clean sweep.
Pretty close, 3-5. Like
pretty close.
That's almost negligible. But if every other difference is pretty significant.
Exactly. And you see the defensive rank 25th to quarterbacks against Dak Prescott, 9th overall to the Rams. To the Aaron Rodgers.
So, and that'll be just for context. That's so the Rams give up the 9th fewest fantasy points. The Jaguars give up the 25th fewest, which that turned out to be what, the 8th highest. That's like the 8th most. So
yeah, exactly. Yeah, 7th or 8th most or whatever that would be.
Almost at different extremes. So yeah,
almost at different extremes. So, the one, I mean, if we really want to deep dive into it, the Rams are, they're in flux. They have a backup quarterback now. Maybe their stats might have been slightly construed from all the different data from throughout the year. Maybe Aaron Rodgers kind of hits it. Him and Christian Watson have been connecting a little bit. But I'm still kind of leaning Dak Prescott. I just think he's a safer bet, especially in the playoffs. I don't know how comfortable I feel with Jacksonville. The Rams defense still has Jalen Ramsey. So, he could shut down Christian Watson, could definitely, limit some of the potential there. So that's what I'm thinking. So I'm leaning Dak Prescott. But Kyle, what do you got, man? What do you got for me?
So, yeah, I think like maybe the one thing I'd argue is because the goal line grade differential is so high, I'd actually probably give the edge to Rodgers in the goal line guide. But other than that, across the board, Dak seems like he's the better option.
Yeah.
I know the ceilings are pretty close. Crazy that Dak's barely eclipsed 20 fantasy points, but Rodgers hasn't even. And
crazy.
You mentioned Packers fans. We've kind of been suffering through an Aaron Rodgers season. I actually don't think he's that bad of a real life NFL quarterback. He's still probably a top 6, top 7 quarterback, which, before the season we were talking top 3. So he's fallen a little bit, but I think he's a much better real life quarterback than he is a fantasy football quarterback.
I 100% agree with that. 100%
I think I've got him ranked at QB 21 this week. So
okay, wow.
I think it's pretty easily Dak, who I have inside the top 10. And I think the spreadsheet here just kind of confirms that there's really there's no category you'd point at Rodgers other than maybe, again, back to this goal line grade. If the Cowboys get close, they're probably just going to run it in. So
Yeah, I
Dak
agree.
loses some touchdown upside inside the 5, but he could still score touchdowns the other 95 yards of the field. So I could see him throwing a 99-yard touchdown bomb to CD Lamb. Who knows? But yeah, so
Potentially.
I think Dak's the answer here pretty easily.
Yeah, I agree. I think I'm going to definitely settle on that and kind of, count my blessings, see what happens there. So Dak Prescott playoffs, don't let me down.
So I know one player that I want to touch on is Rashad White. What do we do
Hmm.
with him? So I've got a couple of Rashad White decisions here.
Hmm.
One I think I'm going to play him in. Uh, over it's a flex spot over a couple of receivers: Drake London, Deontay Johnson. Quarterback changes for both. It's funny. It's a super flex league. I actually picked up both quarterbacks. I have Desmond Ritter and Mitch Trubisky.
Okay.
Um, I think at that point we've never seen Ritter, so I'm going to play Trubisky. That's why I
I
didn't bother
agree.
put it in here. Like we don't have any data on Ritter, so there's a lot of stuff we have complete zeros on. We could look at the matchups and stuff, but
Hmm.
ultimately making his first start, I don't love that.
I agree.
So I'm going to go Trubisky, and had the option: do I want to stack Trubisky with Deontay or just play Rashad White in the flex? And it was close. Ultimately, I think I'm going to go with Rashad White. It seems as though of late he's like this floor. I've kind of skewed this a little bit because really his floor, in terms of you look at his entire season, he had a game this year where he had 0 points,
Yeah,
but he
that was
also
early on this
played
season.
nine
Hmm.
percent of the snaps,
Hmm.
and I think every other game he's at least played. I think it's 22%, and even then he since I think the last time he played as low as 22% was like week 4, week 5. So in
Yeah,
terms
that's
of
the right
his snap
strategy.
percentage, you can
Yeah.
kind of look at it almost like a half season, like instead of the full, what are we, week 15? Like you'd look at really the last 7 or 8 weeks for White. And if you
Hmm.
look at then, his floor is like almost 9 points.
Hmm.
So safe, but again, we're in the playoffs. We didn't really look for safety much. That's why I didn't really highlight the floor too much in my categories because I almost at times it's almost negligible. Like that's not really what I'm after. Like we're against the best teams, so let's always
Exactly
default
right.
to ceiling.
Hmm.
And if you look at ceiling, like he's been able to eclipse 20 points. Deontay has not. And to be honest, this 16.4, I'm pretty sure is with Trubisky. So in theory, like Deontay could have access to his ceiling with Trubisky, but that's still probably less than what White could get if he, gets the touchdowns. Not the
Hmm.
greatest goal line grade for any of these guys. Really, Deontay has the best, but it's not really. It's I think 63.5 is like right around the average. I think for a
Hmm.
passing grade, it's actually technically above average. I think the average this week is like 62.8, but just barely reaching the average. None of these really scream, okay, high touchdown upside either. So probably going Rashad White there. The really tricky one for me is, do I play Rashad White or Jerick McKinnon? Basically, this is my running back
Interesting.
room. So I've got
Okay.
2 running back spots, and then normally I'd like to flex receivers, but just due to injuries, and I've got 4 guys in, but still 1 flex spot open. So got to basically play 3 of these 5 running backs. I've leaned on playing Cordarrelle Patterson for sure and playing Jamal Williams. I know we can talk about Jamal Williams in a sec with you, but
Yeah.
I guess really that last spot between McKinnon, Latavius Murray, and Rashad White, I've kind of leaned away from Murray and really
Yeah. I
focused
was
in
gonna
on
say
Rashad
throw
White
him
and
out. Mhm.
McKinnon. Well, okay.
Yeah.
So my first question was, do you agree with that? Do you agree that Murray is really the 5th guy in this list?
I agree 100% with that. Latavius Murray he'll give you like a solid floor, but nothing very, breathtaking or anything that would break it open. At 7, 8 points a game, something in regard to that. I don't really see him as a high upside guy. As we saw McKinnon last week, he had 7 catches for 112 yards and 2 touchdowns, broke out for 32 points. That's coming off a 14-point game as the week prior. So I think McKinnon is kind of on an upswing right now. He's actually looking pretty solid right there. Yeah, I definitely I wouldn't necessarily go with Latavius Murray right now.
Yeah, my only fear with McKinnon, this floor. I can't remember what team it was, but it was a game where they just blew them out. Like it was okay, it wasn't very close. They didn't really need to use McKinnon.
Yeah.
And
So let me
I mean,
take
I
a
guess
yeah.
it started last week started like a blowout, but then it turned out close. So they still kind of had to rely on him. He ended up with like 100 receiving yards against the Houston freaking Texans.
Yeah, that was a
Are
crazy game.
I mean, yeah, Dallas has a crazy game, but like this week against the
Yeah.
Texans, though,
Oh, yeah.
like can they stop the run at all? Can Houston even keep up to the point where they don't just say, okay, we're just actually going to rest McKinnon this week? Because last year he was the guy they used the most in the playoffs. And so
Mhm.
it seems like they'll use McKinnon when they need to, but they want to almost rest him. And then when the playoffs come, that's when they'll really use him heavy. So my
So
only
my
fear with McKinnon, my gut's kind of telling me this is more one of those weeks where he's not going to get the usage, which is why if you looked at through the spreadsheet, he's probably the better pick than Rashad White, but my gut's telling me White should be the play here. So What do you think?
I think I'm kind of leaning with you as well. Just for further context, though, Kyle, is this PPR, full PPR? What is this, half
Yeah,
PPR?
full point PPR.
Okay, full point PPR.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. So I definitely agree that McKinnon has a higher upside, but I do, it is kind of interesting, right? Rashad White will get you that double digit. He's averaging about 9.09 per game, but I think that's kind of a holistic overall view. He's been averaging double digits over the past month or so he's doing pretty
Yeah,
well.
yeah. If we were to,
Um,
it's still better average than McKinnon though. But yeah, that instead of being around the same average, it would be
be a little bit
significantly
higher.
higher, or
Yeah,
probably
and then
closer to Patterson or even Williams.
exactly, and then McKinnon does have the higher upside with the receptions. I don't really have a lot of investment in McKinnon across my leagues. In regard to, like, let's say that the Kansas City gets in a positive game script and they start handing the ball off often to to the Kansas City Chiefs running backs. Is that going to go more to Pacheco as opposed to McKinnon? What are you seeing on your end?
Yeah, it seems like Pacheco is the guy that he'll get 20 carries in a game if it comes to that type of game script. Whereas, as we
Hmm.
saw last week with Denver, when it was tough to run, when they did want to throw to their running backs a lot, that's who they went to. Is also kind of, it's a tough pass rush, so a lot of dump down options.
Gotcha. Interesting. I
I
do
just don't
think.
know if Houston's a good enough defense to force the issue with McKinnon. I guess that's my biggest fear.
Gotcha. I agree. I think the safer pick will probably be, Rashad White against the Bengals. I think it's going to be a pretty good game. Just, the Buccaneers, they've been kind of up and down all year long, but I think, they're going to have a final playoff push. They're going to try their best to kind of get into it. I think they're going to bring it against Cincinnati. I think, they're probably going to want to kind of control the ball as well, not give it to Joe Burrow and have them be on offense often. So maybe run the ball Rashad White more often. I'm going to look at the game script. Or game total. So 40. It's about 20.5. Oh, man, okay.
Yeah, the
It's a
Chiefs are
lot.
projected to score
That's a
31.75.
lot
This
of
is, I
points
checked this
over there.
yesterday. It may have fluctuated in the last 24 hours, but, or actually, no, I
Gotcha.
checked these Friday because of the Saturday games and some of these decisions. So it may have fluctuated, but yeah, it's a pretty significant difference. And because their implied total so high, that game total is just going to be high too.
Interesting. So you have Jamal Williams, Cordell Patterson, and then you're trying to find one more for the flex. So it's either going to be
Mhm.
McKinnon or White.
And I guess the other thing is, do you agree that Patterson and Williams should be in, or is one of these two? I've been thinking of McKinnon and White actually a better play than either of those two.
Yeah, I'm trying to think about that. So I want to see big picture. Williams has been steady all year long. He really has been. He's been great all year long, but he's very touchdown dependent. He hasn't really been a huge, high volume guy, high yardage guy.
Not
It's kind of
catching
like
passes either.
not catching passes either. And he actually let me down last week. I played him last week. I mean, like, I think that floor for 3.7 was last week, which is definitely a little
I think it was.
intriguing.
Yeah.
However, I think that's the identity of Detroit. If I remember correctly, I think Detroit is the top 5 scoring offense in the league as well. They definitely are doing pretty well. I think you leave Jamal Williams and you got to trust him. I agree. I think Jamal Williams, Cordell Patterson, those are big fundamental pieces of their offense. Um, I guess one last thing for more context. So Rashad White and playoff Leonard Fournette, what's the balance there? Is Rashad White getting muscle carries there still, or how's that going?
It seemed like it's kind of become a 50-50 split. And I
Mm-hmm.
guess that's why I'm so torn between him and McKinnon, because it
Because
does
they're
feel
both
like
times.
McKinnon and Pacheco have that similar type of split.
Yeah, they're both in a timeshare. So it basically comes down to, okay, let me ask you this. And you've been following these two players more. Who's going to be more likely to score a touchdown in your opinion, McKinnon or White?
Probably McKinnon. At least that's what the goal line guide does indicate.
Mm-hmm.
I guess the one thing is with the running backs, it's always tricky because I'm looking at their rushing goal line grades, but they could just as easily impact in the passing game.
Yeah.
I mean, right? White caught I mean, I guess yeah, both of them caught receiving touchdowns last week. I think they had combined for 3 receiving touchdowns. So
Yeah, White got
um,
5 catches last week. So White had
I
18 touches for
suppose
100 yards.
either way to look at it, it's probably McKinnon, because who's more likely to throw more touchdowns, Mahomes or Brady? It'd be Mahomes.
Yeah.
So I suppose either way to look at it, whether you look at who's more likely, White's probably more likely to score on the ground than McKinnon, but this rushing goal line grade isn't great, below average, and it's -7 to their passing grade, which again that's right around average, but actually that would be
The
below average as well.
The one
But
tricky part, though, Kyle, sorry to interrupt you. The one
that's
tricky
fine.
part is the amount of touches. I'm actually looking at them in more detail now. So it looks like McKinnon gets about less than 10 touches a game, combined rushing and passing, which is definitely eye opening, right? So last week was kind of an outlier. Last week he had 13 touches and he had a huge two
That's where this
touchdown
32 game
mhm,
point game came from. I remember that.
under 100%. So I'm looking at it now. The
Probably
week
not happening
prior,
twice.
Yeah, in week 13, he had 10 touches. Week 12, he had 3 touches. Week 11 had 7. And week 10, he had 7. So that's a little bit volatile for me. Let's look at White real quickly just to kind of, bring it on home. I mean, realistically, like we kind of going in circles. I do think that White is the safer play, but do you need the higher upside this week? Like, how does your team? I guess we
It's
are in the
funny.
playoffs.
We're at this point we're projected like basically even. I think we're both projected like right around 140 points, and
Hmm.
we both had players play. So but when you haven't had anyone play those projections, you can almost throw them out. But once you're into it enough, it's okay. Especially with 3 games yesterday and 4 games already being played really with the Thursday game. That's a lot of teams. So I think we're both looking pretty equal. So it's tough to know if I need a ceiling or a floor.
If
And
my
I'd usually
educate
default to ceiling in the playoffs anyway if I'm not sure.
I agree with you. So I know we've been kind of boosting up McKinnon for a while, and obviously the decision is going to fall in your hands. But I think I'm going to lean towards White, and I'll tell you why. It is straight volume, right? So week 10, 22 carries for 105 yards. Week 12, he had another 23 touches in that game. He had 15 in week 13, and he had 18 in week 14. So of the two, White's getting the ball more. His floor over the past month is 10 points, and he's averaging more like in the teens. So I kind of would go for White as a safer bet, but if you want that home run pick, go for McKinnon.
White's ranked higher than McKinnon in my rankings. So even before I did all the spreadsheets, so like the only reason I was questioning is because okay, McKinnon does kind of pop so well in this, but yeah, my gut told me White before I started this. It still feels like even though it's this spreadsheet's telling me it should be McKinnon, it feels wrong. I knew there were like 8 spots apart in my rankings. Like it feels strange to make that much of a difference. So yeah,
Hmm.
I think I'm going to stick with Rachaad White. The other aspect is that I picked up Trenton Irwin. Now, not knowing if Tyler Boyd or Higgins is playing,
Hmm.
the Chiefs play at 1. So to have access to this Bengals 4 o'clock game, I'd have to play White. And then at 4 o'clock, I could decide, do I want to throw Irwin in there and then double flex 2 wide receivers because Higgins and Boyd are out. Playing White gives me the option to do that. So that's why I think I'm
Yeah,
preferring that as well.
I agree.
So
It gives more
final
flexibility too. So
decision not made yet. That might be a 4 o'clock, but I did want to talk about you with Jamal Williams just because we spoke about him here. This is that same league as earlier.
yeah. So basically, same league as earlier. This is like my big money league. Is one I really care about a lot. Essentially, all my team was finally healthy. My team started off 7-0, doing very well, league high in points week after week, and then basically injuries struck. And then what ended up happening is I have 2 wide receivers that I start, 2 running backs that I start, and then 1 flex position. Currently, in my starting wide receivers, I have Mike Williams and Devontae Smith. They're my 2 starting wide receivers there. They basically really blessed me last week with double digits, high scoring points, and they got me into the playoffs because I was on a little bit of a losing streak. Now I'm kind of looking at a flex, right? This is full PPR, so I can kind of go in any direction with it. I still have, you have that in the back of your mind. I have Smith and Mike Williams, my starting wide receiver, so I could potentially move some things around. But I'm pretty comfortable with the upside they offer, especially like in this, competitive. I'm playing the number 2 seed in the playoffs. I want to go for that high upside. So looking at this, I got pick 1 flex. Jamal Williams, we talked about him, steady Eddie. Averages 13.6 points per game. It's been pretty solid. He's projected 9.2 against the Jets. Jets have a pretty surprising defense. Last week, Jamal Williams really let me down with 3.7 points, but he's been pretty steady all year long. And, like the Lions have been frisky. They're going for a playoff right now. And whenever they get into the deep red zone, they put Jamal Williams out of the red zone back. So that's definitely appealing there. Devontae Foreman, just a high volume guy. He's probably him and Curtis Samuel are probably more in the back burner of these options over here. The only reason I kind of like Dante Foreman is that the fact that he actually has volume and the Panthers running game is actually pretty strong. And I think they kind of want to protect Sam Darnold as well. So he's an option. He's projected 11.3 points a game, but I feel like he always underperforms the projection. Like they always kind of aim high with him in regard to like the week to week all the data, Fantasy Pros, ESPN, Yahoo, they kind
Except
of
the
give him a
couple
higher.
weeks where he gets 2, 3 touchdowns and he overshoots those projections. But if he's not scoring the touchdown, you're right, he's not hitting those projections.
Exactly, right? And then we have Mike Evans, right? Mike Evans was one of my early investments, been breaking my heart. He basically, I thought he was going to be one of my fantasy studs, and he actually was at the beginning of the year, but we talked about it. I think his last scored touchdown was around either
5,
mid-October or early. Yeah, it's
weeks,
really
something
early,
5.
right? So
Yeah.
it was Halloween last time that he actually
Mm,
has scored a touchdown for us, for me. He's projected
$19.
13.6 points. He gets 13 points, averages 13.1. He's still the wide receiver 1. Him and Brady aren't necessarily high chemistry. The one thing that I kind of address on the ceiling is he hit 30.3, but over his last 3 games, he's had under 10 points. That's definitely something that kind of like worries me. Like I kind of like the upside of him because he could pop and kind of win me this game this week. But at the same time, I don't know. He's kind of been underperforming. And then
I would
finally,
say,
Curtis,
oh
go ahead.
yeah, right, yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
Listen, I
Introduce
was
your
saying,
Washington player, of course. But how
and then finally,
Curtis
Curtis
Samuel?
Samuel. He was cut. He was on the waiver wire. I was like, you know what? Let me put this guy on this team. I follow the team closely. He's kind of more of a Swiss Army knife kind of player. He doesn't really get a lot of volume because Washington's more of a run first team. The one thing I do like about him is he does get carries, about 3 or 4 a game. He is kind of like a slot wide receiver, and he does have some pop. And the one thing that's intriguing is that the Giants defense is they're kind of in disarray. And Curtis Samuel had 14.6 points last week or against the Giants, or last time against the Giants. So he's intriguing, but I think right now I'm kind of leaning Mike Evans, but I'm kind of curious of your thoughts.
Yeah, I guess the one thing with Samuel, it seems like his better games did come with Carson Wentz. Has
Mhm.
Heineke not been looking his way as often, or is it just that's how these games have gone? They haven't necessarily been needed his skill set as much.
It's been more of a Heineke. Heineke feels very comfortable with Terry McLaurin. So if you guys are invested in Terry McLaurin, like I think the Washington players to have is Terry McLaurin, Antonio Gibson, and Brian Robinson. Those are the big 3. And yeah, I think Curtis Samuel's kind of being faded with he's more of like a second or third option for Tyler Heineke. But at the same time, I think they're trying to incorporate him more. He's the kind of guy where, like, as I said before, he's the kind of like our Deebo Samuel light. They're trying to like give him runs out of the backfield and swing passes and things like that. So I don't trust him in the playoffs, but I like having him on my team pretty much. So that's kind of where
Yeah,
I'm at right now.
yeah. I think
Yeah.
the perfect spot to be is on your bench. If you win, you get a
Mhm.
Commanders player on your team. It's like he was part of this team. Never started, but that's fine. He's on the
Good
bench.
chemistry.
He's
Good
an integral part
chemistry.
of the
Yeah.
team. So no, I
Yeah.
definitely, I try and do that. Okay, I'll go pick up this random Packers player. Just say, hell, I got a Packers player on my team.
Exactly right.
But yeah, I wouldn't start him. I agree. I think it'd be between the other 3. Knowing it's full PPR as well, I've got to get used
Mhm.
to remembering to put the scoring in to help. But knowing it's full PPR, I kind of want to usually flex a wide receiver, so that would
I
kind of
agree.
lean me towards Mike Evans.
Mhm.
But man, he's been so disappointing lately. It's tough to trust.
I
So
agree. I agree.
what are you leaning right now?
So like I said before, I think it's hard because Jamal. I think I'm going to lean towards Mike Evans because I do like the potential upside of a wide receiver. I think Mike Evans is a due. Like he's one of the better wide receivers in the entire league, and the fact that he has like what 2 or 3 touchdowns all year long, there's going to be regression back to the mean. He's going to score a touchdown eventually, right? Hopefully, right? So we're going to go in that direction. I do think he's still going to get some volume. He's averaging he averages 13.1 points a game. And I'd assume he get maybe a floor of 10, 4 catches, 50 yards, something along the lines of that. But potentially has an upside of scoring a touchdown or 2. The one thing I kind of pulls at my heartstrings that Jamal Williams does lead, at least last week he was leading the league in touchdowns, and he tends to get 1 or 2 a week, but at the same time he's very touchdown dependent. So I think I guess the question is who's going to pop more? Is it going to be Jamal Williams or Mike Evans? This year, Jamal Williams has been the one that's been doing it more often, but like in my heart, it's Mike Evans because I just kind of see that wide receiver. The appeal of the wide receiver is kind of pulling me that direction. So you don't have any emotional attachment to it, Kyle. So what would you do?
Well, I despise the Lions, so maybe before you say that,
That's
but
true. That's you
uh,
do have an attachment. That's
yeah,
true.
I think I'd probably just knowing it's against the Bengals, knowing that
Hmm.
I know if anyone listening this morning, full press Sunday live,
Hmm.
um, with Ian and Braden beforehand. Ian picked the Buccaneers, and yeah, he's the Buccaneers managing editor. He's probably the biggest Tom Brady fan out there, but his thought process was, the Bucks are probably going to win this division, and if they kind of knowing they need to make the playoffs, they also need to start playing well. So that's a lot of
Exactly.
narrative base. But if they're gonna keep it close against the Buccaneers, or sorry, against the Bengals, it's probably going to be through the year.
Yeah,
They can't bring their B team, their B grade, even though they're the Buccaneers. They have to bring their A game. And
I
so
like it.
I'd imagine this is the game script where you'd finally go back to the well and trust Evans, the
I agree.
opponent that kind of sets up for that. I mean, of these games, it's the highest game total. Uh,
Hmm.
Actually, it's funny how Washington has the highest implied total. Good for you guys. Yeah, I think I'd also go Mike Evans. The
Yeah.
one last decision I'd kind of like to just hear out with you is Scott Fishbowl playoffs.
There you go.
Representing the Letterkenny division. Actually, I think four of us from the Letterkenny division in the 12-team Letterkenny division made it I guess this is the
Playoffs.
quarterfinal round.
Okay.
So yeah, I think we're within the last 1,000. So
Mm-hmm.
things are going to start
That's awesome,
disappearing
man.
quickly though. And so I entering this week, I'm ranked 295, and I believe it's something. I think the bottom 667, or sorry, the top 667. So exactly 2/3 will make it through. So I got and obviously want to keep scoring well to keep doing well every week. But
Yeah.
yeah, so right now I'd like to move up in the rankings, but I feel like I'm okay where I'm at. Won't get eliminated, but still want to do as best as possible.
Yeah.
Didn't make the good decision yesterday playing Alec Pierce over KJ Osborne.
Yeah. I was wondering about
Yeah, it's gonna
that.
try and recover from that. I guess technically I've got to select 2, 3, 5 of these guys, and really one spot, but only if Tyler Boyd's out. So it's kind of one of those, if Tyler Boyd's in, I'm going to play him. But
Mm-hmm.
if Tyler Boyd does miss, I almost have to. The unfortunate thing is, I almost has to just be Aguilar and Carter, because they're the only ones that play late enough to make that decision. So
Mm-hmm.
if Tyler Boyd misses, would you go with Nelson Aguilar or DeAndre Carter?
That's interesting. Let me take a look real quick. How's DeAndre Carter been for you? I haven't really. So I have more of a Keenan Allen, Mike Williams investment. DeAndre Carter's been pretty volatile for you for the most part, right? Or how's that gone?
Yeah, it's funny. It's weird because some of his best games have come when Evans and Allen and Williams, sorry, were in the game.
Yeah, exactly.
But then last week he also had his worst game with both of them in as well. So it's tough to know what his role is going to be.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I know they got him some like touches around the goal line. Wasn't able to get that because I think this 0.5 did happen last week. So um,
These are very
I
volatile
love the
players.
team. Love investing in the Chargers offense more than say the Patriots passing offense.
Yeah.
Um, so I think I might lean Carter just for the the chance of those touchdowns coming from that team. But
Let me take a look at
Aguilar would
Aguilar.
in theory make more sense getting more targets. Seems like Jacoby Myers will play though, and we'll see with Devontae Parker. Actually, I think Parker was already ruled out, so Aguilar likely to be still one of the starting 2 receivers for the Patriots. It's a
Yeah,
pretty
I'm not really.
brutal Raiders defense in terms of like their DVOA is awful,
Yeah,
28.4. I'm pretty sure that's the worst in the league. So
I'm not in love with his target share. That's one thing that's kind of scaring me. I'm kind of looking at it right now. So he basically had 2 receptions. So last month, 2 receptions, 6 receptions, 2 and 5. He hasn't broken. He's 65 yards was the highest yardage total that he had, and then prior to that, he only had 1 catch over the month before that. So that's definitely interesting. Let me
yeah,
take a
there
look
was
at
a
DeAndre
whole
Carter.
2 months where he got like phased out of the offense completely.
Exactly. Let me look at DeAndre Carter real quick. DeAndre Carter, his weekly projection is 1.4 points. Is that true? That's all. That's ridiculous. And then DeAndre Carter had
I really
one
hope
catch for.
Tyler Boyd plays. That's the takeaway here.
So let's take a look. DeAndre
I
Carter
should have
had
played
two
KJ
targets
Osborne.
last week. You know, yeah, DeAndre Carter. I don't know if I trust him at all. I guess he had a good week in week 12 for 7 catches for 73 yards and 10 targets. But since then, it's been 2 targets and 1 catch over. Sorry, 4 targets over 2 games and 1 catch. So
And that might
that's
have been
really
that big game you just referenced. I think for sure Mike Williams was out, and I think that might have been also when Allen was still out. Maybe Allen was back, but
gotcha.
maybe that was when
Gotcha.
Allen was just coming back as well. A little slow out of the stretch. So
Are there any? I mean, I don't want to be critical of your team. Are there any other like fantasy options on the bench, like any of the waiver wires that are
well,
more
this
intriguing
is the
than that?
entire wide receiver room I posted here, other than Tyler Boyd and Gabe Davis, who already started, so needed 3. Yeah, Nelson Aguilar just picked up. He was the best option on the waiver wire. So
He actually had like over those past 3 weeks, 3 targets, 8 targets, 3 targets. So it's funny. I wanted more of the investment in the DeAndre Carter world. But Nelson Aguilar is more part of the offense, which is pretty
it
interesting.
it seems like it'd be the smarter pick. I probably should flip that to it being Aguilar.
Hmm.
And again, especially knowing Parker's out, Aguilar is probably now the main like deep threat for them. Like he's their
Hmm.
primary perimeter receiver, knowing Jacoby Myers is going to probably play in the slot.
Yeah.
Anyway, we can yeah. So this is our spreadsheet, and then I guess the last fun one will be like I should definitely play Heineke over Colt McCoy, right?
Oh, yeah, I agree. Especially Denver's defense is pretty good. And
Yeah.
Giants' defense is not very good. And on top of that, if the Giants do have any redeeming qualities, it's their defensive line. So they're probably going to maybe stop the run a little bit. So
Okay.
essentially, Washington could potentially throw the ball around.
Which is weird because the goal line grades do favor the Washington rushing game.
Hmm.
Um, I think it's a bit of both. Like especially near the goal line, the Giants have allowed I think 55% touchdown rate on runs inside their own 5 yard line. So they're a good run defense, but it seems like condensed, maybe not so much.
So
Uh,
of these options, I think so. Antonio Gibson over Slayton for sure. Like I know I heavily invested in both of those guys. I know much
yeah,
about
just
them.
I mean, yeah, just through like the spreadsheet kind of shows like it's almost like the Dak to Aaron. Gibson almost ahead of Slayton in every way, and it's yeah, just with the there's points per first down in this, and it's like things that kind of will maybe more favor the running back. There's
Hmm.
some like point totals for like 100 yard games, so might
Hmm.
favor a receiver. Well, maybe
And
not.
I, and I was going to
Gibson
say
could get
Gibson. Yeah, I was going to say Gibson could get. It's funny. Gibson could
well,
get
he could
just as
get
many
100
catches
yards
as
from
Slayton.
scrimmage, but he's probably not going to do 100 yards rushing or 100 yards receiving. That's the tricky thing, right? It's a lot of those
Hmm.
bonuses. It's one or the other. Like you get a 100 yard rushing game bonus or a 100 yard
Yeah, yeah.
receiving, but the guys that get the 100 yard scrimmage don't necessarily hit them. But even so, like outside of that, it like I'm probably going to flex 3 running backs, just play all 5 running backs. So it's Zonovan Knight, J.K. Dobbins, Derrick Henry, James Conner, Gibson. Just flex them. Have my 2 receivers in and hope
Yeah.
it's for the best. I could also, because this is tonight, I could also throw back to tonight, see how things are going.
And then
Maybe by tonight, I don't even doesn't even matter, and I'm already up. Maybe
yeah,
nice.
it will be
We'll see.
nice. And then just for further context, Washington's bringing back the number one corner, Benjamin St. Juice. He should be covering Darius Slayton,
Ah,
so that should
that kind
actually
of
add
in.
more factor in there as well. So I would definitely go Gibson for sure.
Yeah. I guess we do have some chat going on. Oh yeah, Joel. Oh, yeah, Joel from Hull. Always a Hull of a guy. Always joining us here. Uh, okay, yeah. Bucks. Okay, yeah. Buccaneers, Bengals, referencing Ian's decision earlier, right?
Hmm.
I think Braden went with the Bengals. Ian went with the Buccaneers, and well, the hopefully optimistic, eternally optimistic Brady fan in Ian, I think picked the Bucks.
Yeah, die hard. He loves them.
Here's the thing though: is Brady the better quarterback right now than Burrow?
No, not at all. I mean, historically, Brady's one of the best of all time.
Yeah,
I would definitely give it
yeah.
the top. Joe Burrow is the higher upside, and Joe Burrow's
In
starting
one
to
game
catch up.
today,
Yeah,
I think I'd rather have Burrow too.
me too. I
So
agree, 100%.
as much as it seems like Joel's maybe still leaning Brady, but I don't know. I think I'd pick the Bengals because of their quarterback
I agree.
and for a multitude of other reasons.
Yeah,
But I don't know. I feel like the Bucks have the better head coach, though. So maybe not. Sorry,
yeah.
Zach Taylor's done well. I shouldn't brag on Zach Taylor. He's actually made some good decisions. But yeah, I guess it's it's 12:15. So actives in active time.
Let's do it.
All right. Let me pull this up. I'd imagine they're doing it right. Even there's enough games today they'd have to do it because I know they don't
Yeah,
necessarily do
I'm
them
looking at it
on the
right now. It's
island
a
games.
different format than typically, but I see it right now. I can share my screen
Yeah.
if you'd like.
Sure. Yeah. If you've got it, yeah.
All right,
I'm
let me
having a
pull
bit
it up
of
real quick.
trouble
Sure,
finding it. So
no problem.
thank you.
No problem. Give me 1 second. It's a different format than what we're typically used to seeing, but it's here. Let me pull it up real quick. Hold on. Yeah, it should be up there. There you go. Cool. And I can scroll up and down. Yeah, so the first game we're looking at is Falcons Saints. Is there anything that pops out to you? It's more of a Kadero Hodge out. Oh no, he's a full participant. He's going to be good.
Okay. So yeah, this is just the full injury report. Okay.
Exactly. Yeah, we have
I
that
see. Okay.
here.
Yeah, I guess that still doesn't give us the who's
Yeah,
active
let me
though,
try
of the questionable players.
let me take a look at it real quick if they actually have it. Maybe I'll get out here real fast. Give me 1 second.
I have another idea.
Yeah, I'm surprised I don't have it posted right
Okay,
now.
yeah, I've got the Roto Wire inactives. Yeah, the NFL.com doesn't have it like we normally would, but
Where got it? Cool.
I don't think we have to share the screen. I can just read through, unless here.
Yeah, pull it up so I can kind of reference it as well if you don't mind.
Well, here, what I'll do is I'll actually just give it to you in the private chat.
Oh,
It's tough to read anyway on the screen, so
gotcha.
that should give you
Got it. Oh, there you
a
go.
better
Perfect.
look at it.
Cool.
But anyway, so yeah, for Atlanta, interesting to see how the receivers are going to do today. I think it's Drake London, Zacchaeus. Those will be your main two. I guess Kadero Hodge, I suppose.
Mm-hmm.
Or no, you just said he was out.
He was out.
But they have not listed him on the inactive list. So has he been placed on injured reserve? Maybe. Either way, he's probably not relevant.
Yeah.
It's London and Zacchaeus.
Mm-hmm.
How are they going to do with Ritter? Like, I really don't want to trust either, to be honest. So it's tough to trust really any Falcons passing game players. I think that
I
the
agree.
key here is going to be in the run game. Patterson, Tyler Algier. That's really where I'd rather invest, I think.
Yeah, I agree. I think they're going to basically test. Ritter's going to be more of like a scrambling quarterback, dump off quarterback. He's not really going to be hitting it big. So it's going to be, definitely think it's going to be a Cordell Patterson game today.
Which is why, yeah, I was so in on. Okay, when I was looking through my running backs, he was like, he was guy I view. He's my RB1, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
That is that team I referenced earlier that has Jefferson and Tyreek Hill. So which is why I tend to default to try and flex 2 wide receivers, as I mentioned. But full point PPR, yeah, heavy invested in the big wide receivers. So they did well yesterday. We'll see if the rest of this running back room can carry me. But yeah, the Panthers. There's only 3 players listed here. None of them are fantasy relevant players, really. I think it's backup defender. It really just backup. It looks more like the healthy scratch list. So I don't think there's anyone on the injured list that's injured and not playing. Moving on to the Bears, though. So Chase Claypool and N'Keal Harry are both out. So wide receiver, and with Mooney on IR, that really means the receiver room is what? Equinemius St. Brown, Dante Pettis, and Byron Pringle are your main 3 wide receivers.
Yeah.
If there's any pass catcher I want to play, it's probably Cole Kmet.
Yeah, I agree to that. Like some heavy volume. Yeah, definitely need a little outlet for Justin Fields. I agree with that.
And I guess, is Khalil Herbert playing? Because there was talk of him being activated off injured reserve. Now I'm gonna look, because he's not listed here. So, but if he's been designated to return from injured reserve but hasn't been activated off it yet, he wouldn't be listed here if he's not playing.
Yeah, I don't see him on like the actual injury report for the week for NFL.com either. Like as
so
stated or anything. I'm not sure.
I'd imagine Herbert's not playing. They're going to just give it a week and they haven't activated him yet, because in theory they could activate him. I suppose they would have had to activate him yesterday. I don't think you can make IR changes on Sunday. Maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think maybe Wednesday, I think, is the last time they can do it throughout the week, if I understand correctly.
Yeah, it's tricky anyway. So yeah, so I don't think Herbert's playing. So David Montgomery should still be a good play. I'll just say that. So the recently signed T.Y. Hilton, not going to play. He's inactive. No one should pick him up in fantasy.
No,
I think his contributions to the Cowboys may come in the playoffs.
Which I agree.
For fantasy is not going to matter at all. So yeah, there's no reason to roster him in fantasy in any format, I don't think. Jake Ferguson's inactive, though, the rookie tight end, and I know they've got a couple of tight ends there. Since he's come back healthy, though, it does seem like Dalton Schultz is kind of taking over. I think I've got him ranked as tight end 2 this week.
Wow, okay.
I finally dropped Andrews off of 2.
Okay.
And yeah, he didn't necessarily do that great against Cleveland yesterday. So yeah, I think I've got Dalton Schultz as the tight end 2 for this week. So
yeah, I like that. Schultz.
I almost had Hawkinson, and he did score at the end, so maybe.
What a crazy game yesterday, huh? That was so much fun.
Man, largest comeback ever.
Yeah, crazy.
So sorry, Colts fans. So for the Lions.
Yeah, we take a look at the Lions game.
This was interesting because we're talking about Williams, and I noticed Justin Jackson was questionable this week. So I figured if no Justin Jackson, that's got to help Williams' floor in just terms of the total number of carries. I think what happened last week, Justin Jackson got a red zone carry, it turned into a touchdown, and that could have potentially been Williams. Now it was, I think, from the 15. So it seems like once they get inside the 5, they'll always trust Williams there. But the fear is, do they score before? Justin Jackson's active, so makes that decision of yours make me want to lean more towards Evans again.
I agree. Yeah, there's more data kind of projecting towards Evans. I agree with that.
Joshua Dobbs is on the Lions. He's inactive, but he's on the Lions. That's news to me. Actually, I think the big names for the Lions really are on the defensive side.
Exactly.
Oh, wait, this is from yesterday. Right? Oh no, wait, they didn't just play the Bills. I'm confused. Yeah, they're playing the Jets today. Wrong AFC East team. I was thinking of the Thanksgiving Bills Lions game, right?
No, you're fine.
And this week's got me all mixed up. Yes, the Lions are playing today, and yes, Justin Jackson will be active as the 3rd running back, so it does maybe take away from Jamal Williams. And the Jets matchup isn't great. I don't love that for him either.
Yeah, I agree.
Houston Texans, I think this was announced yesterday, but Nico Collins and Brandon Cooks both out. OJ Howard's also out. So the rotating door tight end of who gets active or inactive, I guess Brevin Jordan will be in. Jordan Akins, I still don't really trust him. I think I ranked Akins like tight end 24, 25, like just made the list. So not really excited to play either.
Yeah.
Jaguars, Trayvon Walker, I guess on the defense is the biggest impact there, but it seems like they'll have most of their healthy receivers.
Yeah, everyone seems pretty healthy this week. It's more of the defensive injuries throughout the league so far. I don't really see any glaring
Yeah,
offensive missing points.
no, it's true. Yeah, I guess the when the Bears receivers and Texans receivers are your biggest names, yeah, that's probably a good. Well, it just everyone else is on injured reserve. That's the problem. Anyone that is injured is on
Yeah,
IR.
for that
So,
year, I agree.
let's see the Saints.
Yeah, I was gonna say Marshawn Lattimore, but he's
This
been out for a while. Or is he actually on injured reserve, or what's his
No,
status?
I mean, if he was on injured reserve, he wouldn't be listed here.
That's true.
He's been. It's funny because he was out for a while, then came back, and it seems like he's re-aggravated. And then one of their safeties, PJ Williams, that's 2 starters in their secondary. So I guess
Potential
Desmond Ritter
upside.
gets a bit better. I still again wouldn't play him. Like I'm still going to trust Trubisky over Ritter. But interesting, the inactives are running back Eno Benjamin and running back Dwayne Washington. Knowing that Mark Ingram's on injured reserve, so that leaves Kamara. And is David Johnson the main backup to Alvin Kamara?
Oh my God, is that true? Look that
I'm
up
pretty
right
sure
now.
he is. I'm going
That's
to check the
hilarious.
Saints roster because I'm trying. Like, who else is active?
I have no idea. Let me pull it up
Washington
right now.
and Benjamin both out.
That's hilarious. Throwback.
And I mean, do they not even have a third guy active? They must have a third running
They
back.
must have one. Let's
Oh,
find
the
that real quick.
fullback Adam Prentice. But yeah, it's Kamara and David Johnson. Those
Yeah,
are the
David
two running backs
Johnson
for the Saints.
That's hilarious.
Playing the
Interesting.
Falcons. This should be a good week for Kamara.
Yeah, I agree. A lot of touches this week.
So I guess is this even count as a big name? James Robinson's inactive for the Jets.
That's
the running
crazy. He's
backs.
had a roller coaster ride all season, huh? That's funny. You know, beginning
Michael
of the year.
Carter's
Go ahead.
back, but it does seem like Zonovan Knight's the guy. Like
He
I've got him
is.
started in 2 or 3 leagues. So
You put me on him last week. It was funny. You kind of brought him up, and I was like, I don't know if I trust him yet. Then all of a sudden, he's consistent every single week. He's doing pretty well, so he's the guy.
I'm a big Michael Carter fan, but it does look like he's the better running back. So
I agree.
shocked that he went undrafted this year.
Yeah, it's crazy.
But hey, just like it was shocking that James Robinson went in undrafted. Corey Davis is out, and again, what's funny, Mike White isn't. Oh yeah, he is here. Sorry, Mike White is also out. That's really the lead. But they announced that yesterday too that Zach Wilson would be getting the start. So,
what are your overall thoughts on Zach Wilson in general, like even as a long-term prospect in real life, like as opposed to fantasy?
I've got to answer that question myself. I've got a salary cap contract league where I've got a 3-year contract with Wilson, and if you cut a player, you save half the money from that year and also the next year. If you cut a player 3 years out or more, you get to save up to 75% of that contract. So for the sake of my cap space in 2024, if I were to cut Wilson before the end of the season, his cap hit, instead of being, because if I just keep him, it's $25, but if I ever cut him at any point, the time to cut him to maximize how much I'd save would actually be before the end of the season. So I'm really hoping this week answers that question. Is he someone that I can just cut and say, okay, I'm just going to save the cap space and find my way with other quarterbacks? He's my QB2. Well, I just traded for Goff on a 1-year contract, so
that's what I can rely on. Yeah. Oh,
and I'm just going to be riding Mahomes and Goff as the QB tandem, and it's just like, man, I've got expensive bench quarterback in Zach Wilson, right? But that's the way it goes.
Yeah.
What the 49ers were going to do with Garoppolo, essentially, but
that's true too.
To not be the case.
That's true too.
Hopefully, I don't have to start Zach Wilson at any point. This kind of seems like, however long Mike White's out for, this is the stretch where Zach Wilson has to show he's the guy, or he may, in fact, lose this shot at having this Jets job.
I agree with you. I think this is a great data collection point for you to kind of reflect and kind of see how he does over the next month or so, to kind of in the next month actually to kind of see how he does long-term projection. But I don't really.
2 weeks. I mean, our season's done in 2-3 weeks. So if I decide to cut him, I'm pretty sure I have to do it.
Oh, you have to do it pretty soon
before week 17.
I got you. That makes sense. Okay.
So
my intuition is he's not the guy. My intuition is he could get that $20 back for you for your salary cap purposes. But I just don't know how hard it is to get a quarterback in that league. It sounds pretty tough if he's QB2.
Yeah. I guess, it's not, I mean, it's a super flex league. It's not really easy to get any quarterbacks.
Yeah.
Knowing that it's, the auctions, there's free agent quarterbacks that will probably become free agents every year. So it's probably easier than a typical dynasty league where everyone's got the quarterbacks are going to stay on the teams for the rest of the year and you have to trade.
Yeah.
Might be able to get some guys in free agency. So I don't know that I'd necessarily stress the idea of, okay, if I don't have Wilson, I'm doomed.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd probably lean towards cutting him unless he shows amazingly over the next 2 weeks. So
I love
all to
Joel right
say
here.
for today, I don't love. I think you can still trust Garrett Wilson.
Mm-hmm.
His
Yeah,
worst games have come with Zach Wilson, and however, his best games have come with Mike White and Joe Flacco. But he's not every game he played with Wilson was awful either. He did have some good games with Wilson. I
that's a
think
good
Elijah
point.
Moore's the guy he's the guy you bench. Like there's no way I'm
Yeah,
playing
Elijah Moore.
Elijah.
I am in a keeper league. He actually disappointed me all year long.
Yeah.
Our boy Joel in the chat says Zach Wilson is all done. He said he's better suited as a backup. And I guess Kyle, one last question because we never got to it before we wrap it up for today. So I have that. Speaking of the Jets quarterback, so speaking of that high upside, I guess, or not high upside, but the wide receiver decision. Would you start Garrett Wilson or Christian Watson? That's kind of that's my dilemma. One of my leagues.
Right, I saw that. They're pretty close. I'm going to pull up my rankings right now and
Mm-hmm.
just see like what my instinct is saying. Now, is this full point PPR?
Let me double check. I think it's a half point PPR in that league. Let me double
Okay,
check.
well that is where my rankings default to. So if it is, that'll
Yeah,
be
it's
perfect.
half point PPR.
So I've got Christian Watson at 19, Garrett Wilson at 22.
You're not afraid of that Jalen Ramsey matchup at all for the Rams?
Yeah.
I'm just asking. I'm not trying to I don't really care.
No, I probably am. I'm
too.
trying to think like corner wise. It's probably yeah. It's going to be way better matchup corner wise than any other players on the Lions.
Mm-hmm. I guess
I
they have
I just trust Aaron Rodgers so much more than Zach Wilson. So
that's
true. I would probably just go with the better.
That's true. That's a good point. That's a good point. I forgot about Zach. I mean,
obviously, I did rank this thinking Mike White would play. So this is like Garrett Wilson at. If I expected Mike White to play, he'd probably be wide receiver 22. Maybe I dropped him a little bit. I don't think I dropped him that much. So in theory, if I were to really dive back into the rankings, and I mean, there's players that have played on Saturday, so it's tougher to do now.
Mm-hmm.
Some players locked in, but I probably would in fact lower him. So it almost because I've got McLaurin one spot behind Wilson.
Okay.
You think that makes sense?
No, I think
just again, knowing that Zach Wilson's playing, if Mike White was playing, I think I'd be okay with it. But they're that's just one example. Okay, he probably drops behind them. I've got Devontae Smith at 25. No Goddard, especially, probably means I'd rather play Smith. So already we're dropping Garrett Wilson to 24, 25.
Mm-hmm. Yes, Christian Watson.
He's ahead of Mike Evans, if that makes you feel any better. I don't know if he doesn't.
No, different league. But yeah, I got you right there. That makes sense. Cool.
So yeah, so that's probably I'd probably lean Christian Watson.
Cool.
Not a homer pick, I swear. Because I mean, the truth is he is so touchdown dependent. It's the same thing as Jamal Williams to a certain extent.
Mm-hmm.
Will the touchdowns continue? The goal line guide says, if they're going to score touchdowns, it's probably going to come through the air.
Mm-hmm.
Now, no Aaron Donald also means his Rams' run defense is probably not as good. So maybe they do actually have success on the ground. But
yeah, we'll see. I think I'm gonna follow your lead and go with a better quarterback in this position because obviously Garrett. We have all that data, but it's so funny. You actually. The best part about fantasy football is you take all the data, the data, take the context, and then kind of find that nuance that goes along with it too. So Garrett Wilson's data has been tracking, but different quarterbacks and moving parts. So I like the whole Christian Watson.
Yeah, if you could just signal it, just take his average from the Zach Wilson games. What does that look like compared to Christian Watson's average? Because I think if you take their overall fantasy points per game average, I think they're pretty identical.
Mm-hmm.
I think all three of the main the three best rookies, like we all predicted, were Olave, Watson, and Wilson.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, Drake London and Treylon Burks.
100%.
But which I thought those were going to be the two. That's my I'm admitting fault there. I'll take the L because I didn't have any Chris Olave before the season started, and I had to trade in season Breece Hall and Tyler Boyd to get Chris Olave and Chase Edmonds. At this point, I'll take it because I'm playing Chris Olave in a playoff game here, not Breece Hall. So, and salary cap contract league, rookie contracts, because Olave was a later pick, he's actually a cheaper contract than Hall. So, if you get the better player later, it's actually the most ideal thing. So, I think I'm still happy I did that. But yeah, that's what it costs to get Olave basically in season. Once I was too late on it, so. You overpaid, you can still get the players. That's also the beauty of fantasy. If you miss out, you just have to pay more. That's all. But yeah, I guess the last two teams I didn't mention with the inactives are the Eagles and Steelers. Nothing really major though. Kenny Pickett, I think he had not cleared concussion protocol, so they announced it, I believe, yesterday or even Friday that he was going to be out. So Mitch Trubisky was getting the start. For anyone who watched the Monday night show on the Going for Two Live network, I do we call it the 2-point conversion Monday show. Just kind of end the week. You end the drive with a 2-point conversion after the big touchdown, after the big Sunday celebration of touchdowns. You end with the 2-point conversion. So that's our thing there. But we have Dr. James Freddy.
Oh yeah,
author of this amazing book, by the way. If injuries suck, but your fantasy team doesn't have to. We have to show it every time on the stream.
I love
Not
that.
have to. We gladly will show it. Doc. But anyway, the doctor, great fantasy player, but also understands injuries really well as a radiologist. And anyway, as part of the talk, we had kind of went through all these backup quarterbacks: Brett Ripien, Mitch Trubisky, I guess maybe Desmond Ridder, but I guess focus on the injuries like Joe Flacco at the time. We were talking about Flacco potentially starting over Mike White, not Zach Wilson. And I guess my statement was, if you're going to pick up any of these guys, it's probably Trubisky, knowing that with Pickett, it's a concussion and those guys tend to be held like this year. If you're getting a concussion, you're probably not playing that next week. Like the way they're kind of really delaying the steps. It's basically you have to start clearing it the next day. You have to feel completely better the next day to have a chance to play on the Sunday. So knowing that with Pickett, it seemed like it was a legit concussion and he was still showing symptoms the next day, he wasn't going to clear in time. So I thought Trubisky was probably the best option to start, but also provided decent enough upside on his own. So Trubisky could be playable this week, all to say. That's where I guess we'll end with.
Cool.
I hope he is anyway. I got to trust him in the playoffs. That's
a dangerous proposition, but
it's funny. A super flex league, I invested. Okay, I've got Russell Wilson, Marcus Mariota, and I mean it's a team with Josh Allen, so that's great. But to have who's that QB2? Didn't think I'd be deciding between Mitch Trubisky and Desmond Ridder this late in the season. Actually, I might have thought that. Okay, maybe Trubisky starts the whole year and Desmond Ridder enters for Mariota. But it's funny how we've had so much of Pickett, he's already gotten hurt, and it's now that older quarterback.
The only upside for Ridder is I think he's gonna. I think we'll see how it actually goes, but I think he has that mobile quarterback upside in the game, so we'll see how that goes. But obviously, first game you don't want to do that in the playoffs, so I agree with that. He's too early to trust him at all.
Again, when you have Josh Allen also starting, maybe that's the type of scenario you'd take that risk. But going to be going Trubisky there. But we're going to be heading out. As I mentioned at the start of the stream, George, I won't be doing any more of these the rest of the year. I don't know if you're still available to do any on Sundays, but if not, this will be our final Full Press Fantasy Live of the season.
Yeah, I had a great time this year. We'll see. We'll be in touch. I'm not sure if I'll have another one going on later on this year. Obviously, the next one's on Christmas Eve. That's going to be kind of hard to kind of put things together with family time and things like that.
Actually, Christmas Day next Sunday, and then New Year's Day the next Sunday. So tough days, I think,
for people in general. Makes sense.
Being around, because I won't actually be in town. Won't have my equipment, so that's for sure. Christmas Day will be out for me. But so. Cool. I think it's probably just best. We'll leave it here. As I mentioned, still head over to fullpresscoverage.com. We'll still be doing articles. You can check out me and Brad's rankings every week. I'll still do the goal line guide. I'll keep doing my rankings and the goal line guide and make sure that's all written up until the end of week 18. So even after the fantasy championships are done, and for those who do play week 18, there will still be content for you. So
100%.
Appreciate everyone who's kind of joined us throughout the year. Joel's here every week, so appreciate Joel for that. And
thanks, Joel.
Showing us the support, showing us the love. But really appreciated this whole experience with you, George. Look forward to talking with you. If it wasn't every week, almost every week, and did miss you the times you weren't here. So sad to not have you, but it's great to share this season with you here.
No, I definitely agree, Kyle. We definitely got to keep it up. And next, off season, we'll do some, pre-fantasy drafts. We'll do some other, I don't know if you're interested in the mock drafts at all, in the actual NFL drafts. We can look at that as well. I'll definitely be around for content all year long. Everyone else, guys, thank you for joining in. I really appreciate the conversations. It's been fun for me to kind of look at my team, but also get feedback from you guys as well. And just in general, guys, I'll be around as well. I'm the managing editor of the Commanders. I have a big game tonight. We have a big game next week against the 49ers. I'm going to host a 49er content creator and kind of preview the game. So definitely be in touch. I'll love to talk to you guys.
You're in a playoff race. Every game's big the rest of the year.
It's fun. It's been fun. It's kind of rare around here, so I'm excited about that. It's cool.
Good. Technically, the Packers are still alive, so they're in the race too. I'm Full Press Packers managing editor, as well as being the Full Press Fantasy, Full Press Fantasy Football managing editor. We've got the Full Press Fantasy Pod every week. We'll do one more episode before we're going to take a break as well. So we've got a week 16 rankings preview from Brad Harvin and I. You can follow me on Twitter at Senra Says. George is at GCarmy21. And of course, follow everything Full Press Coverage at FP_coverage as well. George, really appreciated this. Listeners, viewers, loved it all. Thank you very much.
Guys. Have a great season. Happy holidays.
Yes, and thank you all for watching this year of Full Press Fantasy Live.